Hey everybody, Cynic25 here, bringing you another Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck profile. This time we're profiling Elemental Heroes, the New Age heroes with the new mass support. And yeah, Heroes are back, baby. Man, Heroes were a deck that I originally started playing in Yu-Gi-Oh! Back in the GX era, and I've loved Heroes ever since, man. I mean, they're just so much fun to play. It's an extra deck toolbox. They have so much search potential, and it's one of those decks that just has so much nostalgia to it. In its own right, Heroes have always been a deck that's been fairly offensive at heart, in the sense that it ends up throwing everything in the kitchen sink at the opponent and kind of hopes it pays off. That's still basically the case now, and it just has a lot of different ways of going about that. So this is my variant of Heroes. Now, I know, like, with Heroes just coming out, there's people are kind of experimenting with what's the best build, and by no means am I saying that this is the best build to run with Heroes, but this is just the variant I found to be the most fun, the most consistent, and the most true to how I see Elemental Heroes playing at this point. So yeah, I call it +1 hero beat because the main thing of this deck is that it has a lot of ways to create advantage and basically just beat down the opponent. So yeah, let's go over the deck profile here. So I'm only running 10 monsters. Again, most hero builds tend to not run that many monsters, and this one is no different than that. I'm only running 2 Alias, 3 Blaze Man, 3 Shadow Mist, and then 2 Bubble Man. So very minimal monsters here. I would say the most contrasting thing about my monster lineup as opposed to other decks is I'm actually running Blaze Man. I know a lot of hero players that I've seen online that I've talked to don't actually even run Blaze Man. They just tend to run more support for Shadow Mist, such as Goblin Burr and Summoner Monk, to continue to basically abuse this card, and I think those cards are great, but I'll get into an explanation of why I decided to run the build I'm running, which is basically the Poly build, which, also another side note, I was actually originally very, very against the Poly build, and it's just kind of grown on me over time, so it's another side note. It's also very nostalgic. But anyway, so I'm choosing to run Blaze Man because it just works so efficiently with Shadow Mist in many ways. So this deck's basic opening play is usually, I mean, this is the basic opening play. Normal summon Blaze Man, get a polymerization from the deck, search out Shadow Mist or whatever search card you have, polymerization Blaze Man and Shadow Mist for Nova Master, get Shadow Mist effect, take another Blaze Man for later, and then just beat something over with Nova Master and draw a card. I mean, that's the basic cycle of the deck. Now, obviously, there's variants of that depending if you have a hero lives, to special summon Shadow Mist from the deck, and then obviously make Dark Law from there. But that's, I would say, the basic play of the deck, is just continuing to abuse Shadow Mist and Blaze Man to their fullest extent, thinning your deck, searching out your power cards, drawing into your power cards with Nova Master, and then just beating down your opponent through sheer force. That is literally this deck's goal. The amount of deck thinning potential that this deck has is absolutely unreal. It could just go through cards so quickly between the amount of search power you have with 3 Rhoda, the emergency call, a hero lives, foolish burial, drawing cards with Nova Master, searching things out with Blaze Man, searching things out with Shadow Mist. I mean, there is just so many ways to thin your deck and get to the cards you need. It just ends up being unbelievably consistent. So yeah, again, like the elements I'm running here, obviously fire, dark, water, and light, and I basically have access to everything. Now, you may be asking, how am I getting out Kamikaze and Dian? And to that I say, Form Change, which is just such an unbelievable power card in this deck. Now, that's another thing that I would say is pretty contrasting with my build as opposed to other builds, is I'm actually running 3 of this card. And the reason I'm running 3 is because it almost kind of makes up for Super Poly being gone. It gives you a way to continue the assault, like after, like, let's say, Nova Master attacks, you can Form Change out of Nova Master and go into, I don't know, you can go into Dian, you can go into Kamikaze, you can go into Acid, anything really, and you can Form Change basically anything you have into another masked hero. The only inconsistency is with Dark Law. Form Change doesn't quite work on Dark Law. It doesn't work to get out Dark Law. So that's the only downside of that. But otherwise, it just helps you continue the assault, and it also helps you dodge things. So there's been so many times where it's like people would try to compulse, like a Nova Master, they try to compulse Acid or something, and I would just Form Change out of it and go into something else. So it just helps you dodge those like traps and stuff, and keeps you with field presence on the board, and is just great. You know, this card has so much utility. It can also be searched with Shadow Mist. I draw into it a lot, so it's just great. But to continue going up here, obviously I'm running 2 Hero Lives. I was pretty conflicted on whether I want this card because of the life point cost. But I decided to go with it because, again, it thins your deck. It gets you to Shadow Mist quicker. It gets you to your Mass Change quicker via Shadow Mist, and just gets Dark Law on the board, which is still a very important card. So yeah, I opted to run 2 Hero Lives, 3 Polymerization. So yeah, this is the poly build. Because I'm running the 3 Blaze Men, and it makes summoning things like Ab-Zero, the Shining, and Nova Master just so easy. You're getting big beaters out like every turn, and the fact that you can go in the Shining that much easier, it helps with the recycling, because there's been many times where it's like I would Miracle Fuse to get out Nova Master or something, and I would banish Blaze Man, Shadow Mist, and then when the Shining died, I would just get Blaze Man and Shadow Mist back to my hand and just keep creating advantage. So there's just so many ways to just recycle your stuff and keep the attack going. So that's what I really like about Heroes. So yeah, 3 Miracle Fusion, again, just more ways to get out big beaters. This was an amazing card back when Heroes were a thing. It's still amazing now. It's a 1-card Ab-Zero. It's a 1-card The Shining. It's a 1-card any elemental hero fusion. 1 Foolish Burial. Now, the reason I'm including Foolish Burial over the last E-Call is because the way I utilize Foolish Burial is I almost ubiquitously dump Shadow Mist, because then Shadow Mist allows you to search anything else. It also thins your deck pretty well, so it just has more utility than Emergency Call to me. So that was the reason I chose to include it. Also, there's some rare occasions where I want Alias in the grave to Miracle Fuse into the Shining, and Foolish Burial just helps you get to that. 3 MST for back row. Again, this is important in this format. 3 Mass Change, obviously staple. I went over the Form Change already. This is another key component of the deck, just keeping the attack going, keeping your board presence. As for the traps, I'm running 1 Compulse and 1 Solemn for the one-offs. Running 3 Vanity's Emptiness for, again, more board control. This card is really good. It's just unbelievably amazing, and you have so many ways to turn it off. With all your search cards, form changes, just your instant spells, you could just turn this off so easily. Call the Haunted, obviously, for Shadow Mist. You want to keep abusing it, getting its change effect. But again, really, the one downside to this, and it's the only thing I've been really struggling with, is that unlike other people's hero builds, which focus almost exclusively on Shadow Mist, this deck gets Dark Law out a little bit less consistently than those builds, so keep that in mind if you're net decking this. You won't be getting Dark Law as consistently as other builds, but you make up for it in just your raw beatdown and efficiency. But don't get me wrong, this deck gets out Dark Law about every duel. You're just not going to be doing it as often or in so many ways as other hero builds would. And that's why I kind of have these Goblin Bird and Summoner Monk sideboarded, because I have considered them in the deck, I have ran them in the deck, but because this deck's main play involves the normal summon of Blazeman, I would rather commit my normal summon to Blazeman than commit my normal summon to a Goblin Bird or a Summoner Monk that can get Fiendish Chained, it can get Vanity'd Emptiness. There's so many things that can happen to these cards. It's very conditional. And it ends up not being a very reliable way to get Shadow Mist effect off. A Hero Lives, Call the Haunted are much more reliable. Now, I know obviously Call the Haunted can get MST'd, but with all the effect negation that's going on, it's just Goblin Bird and Summoner Monk are just too slow, they're too conditional. And for this variant of the deck, the poly build, I just didn't feel like they fit the deck well enough. But again, you feel free to experiment with these. There's plenty of room to put these back in. You could take out some E-Calls. You can just experiment. Obviously, you could drop an MST, drop a Foolish Burial. But this is just the build I opted to play. It's the most consistent, and again, I want to use my normal summon for Blazeman. Going into the extra deck here, we're running one of the Contrast Hero Chaos. You don't get this out that often. You do, don't get me wrong. But it's just, every once in a while, it's kind of gimmicky. It's like, you get on the field and then they can negate things. It's great. But more often than not, you usually don't go into this every duel. Every other duel, I'd say. DN comes out with Form Change. You can also special summon Shadow Mist or Blazeman, get the effects. Kamikaze, obviously this is only coming out with Form Change. Nova Master, this is one of the main cards you're going to, which is why it's at 2. It keeps the draw engine going, keeps you thinning your deck, keeps you going to the power cards you need, and it's just a 2600 beater. What's also really nice that I want to make a note of is it works very, very well with a Dark Law. So for Nova Master to get its draw effect, it only needs to destroy the monster. It doesn't need to send it to the graveyard, and that's critical because Dark Claw is banishing things. So you still get Nova Master's effect when Dark Claw is on the field, but Kamikaze you don't. Kamikaze, you need to actually send the thing to the graveyard. Nova Master, no. It doesn't need to go to the graveyard. So that's an important point to note, and it just adds to the consistency of this deck. The Shining, obviously, another great card. It's usually 3200 beater. Recycles cards. It's good. Acid, another great just spell and trap nuke. You can go into a form change and just nuke boards. It's just unbelievable. Esquiliato, only one of these. Every once in a while it's handy because you have a lot of heroes in the grave often. You can make this thing pretty big. Ab-Zero again. Ab-Zero is Ab-Zero. I've considered bumping it up to 2, but 1's pretty sufficient right now. Koga, obviously this can come out with Alias, but I also often go into a form change. Just great. It's just another big beater. It has that honest effect, and it's good. Darklaw, again, at 2. This is one of the main cards of the deck. Like I said, it doesn't come out quite as often as other hero builds, just keep that in mind, but obviously this card is coming out at least once every duel. Like, it still is very easy to get out. And then I'm just running a Honor Arc and a Castell. So yeah, that's the main deck and extra deck. Going into the sideboard here, these are just cards I considered in the build. So I already mentioned Goblinberg, I already mentioned Summoner Monk. Soul Charge, considered this card, but with a Hero Lives, I was already forfeiting too many life points, and I just didn't feel Soul Charge was worth it. And especially considering the theme of this deck is very offensive in nature, losing my battle phase was pretty bad to me. So I opted to actually not include Soul Charge in this build and just run the Hero Lives. Mass Charge. So this card I actually really want to fit back into the build. I've ran it for the longest time, but honestly doesn't usually feel like I need it. The deck's very efficient. It almost always is going into a power play. You're drawing into it with Nova Master, Kamikaze, or just you thin your deck so hard to get into those power cards. So I never really feel like I'm at a loss for power cards. But Mass Charge, again, it's still a really efficient card. At its heart, it's a 1-card mass change, and it's just good. So if there's any card that's on my number 1 list to get back into the main deck, it's this. But yeah, experiment with it if you want to net deck this. Book of Moon, I just had this in here as just another defensive trap. I just am a fan of Book of Moon, but didn't have any room for it. Forbidden Lance, if you watch my previous deck profiles, you know I'm a fan of Forbidden Lance, but it doesn't really work that well in this build because if you Forbidden Lance one of your heroes, you actually can't polymerization with it because it's immune to spells and traps. So Forbidden Lance actually ends up being a little counterproductive in this deck, so I just ran the 3 NST. The Diffusion. So this card is just it's so gimmicky, but when it works, boy, does it work. The highest utility of this card is as follows. Let's say you have Nova Master on board, and you polyed to make it with Blazeman and Shadow Mist. So let's say it's your opponent's turn, and they go to attack your Nova Master or something, or maybe they try to compulse it or something. You then Diffusion it, dodging whatever they use to try to get rid of it. You bring back Blazeman and Shadow Mist on board, proccing both of their effects on your opponent's turn, mind you, so you can still use their effects next turn. You can get a polymerization, you can get a mass change, and it just sets you up so nicely for next turn. I just took this out. I really want to put it back in because it just had so much utility. If anything, I might actually take out 1 form change for this just because of its utility. The only reason I took it out was because it doesn't work well with the mass change fusions. It really only has utility with the cards you're using polymerization with. And mind you, you're using polymerization quite often. But there are times where this card can be dead, so keep that in mind. But I might still experiment with it and take out maybe 1 form change. But until then, this is, in my opinion, still the most consistent variant of the deck. But Diffusion does give you the potential to go even further than that, so just keep that in mind. World Decree, there was a variant of this deck where I had like no traps, and I just was running just pure beatdown. Didn't like it that much. I kind of missed the protection, especially when you're forfeiting life points but a hero lives. You kind of want to have a little bit of back row. So I decided to opt out of Royal Decree and just go to 3 vanities and just put a few back row cards in here for protection. So yeah, that's basically it. Again, just as just an overview of the side deck, the main cards I've been thinking about putting back in are Match Charge and Diffusion. If you want some more Dark Law support, Goblinberg Summoner Monk, consider putting in here. But again, this is the most consistent variant of the deck, which just thins you pretty well. It gives you some draw power. It's just pure and utter hero beat with a +1 variant engine attached to it. So it's just, this deck, in my opinion, it's just the epitome of everything heroes used to be, which is just relying on polymerization to make your big fusion beaters and just beating your opponent down unrelentlessly. So, yeah, this is Heroes. I'm really excited for it. I can't wait for it to come out in real life. I'm probably going to end up buying it. And yeah, just enjoy Heroes, guys. They're coming back. It's nostalgia overload right now. I just can't wait to see Heroes become a thing again. I'm going to continue working on this deck. You're probably going to end up seeing alternate versions of it, version 2, version 3, because I just absolutely love Heroes. But for now, pretty satisfied with this build, but we'll see where it goes. So anyway, obviously, leave in the comment section below what you think of the hero build, what you would add to it, what cards you would put in it, take out, or whether you like it, you don't like it, let me know. But as always, this has been Cynic25 here. If you're going to like, comment, subscribe, and take care. Yeah.